It was one of those nights where the rain just wouldn't let up, the kind of night that made even the streetlights look tired and lonely. And if you ask me, the whole world felt heavier than usual, like maybe the sky was grieving with you. You know what I mean? I was sitting on that old, sagging couch I'd patched up too many times to count, watching the clock tick so slow you'd think time itself was trying to sleep through the storm, and my daughter Emily was curled up on the far end with her battered stuffed bunny, the only toy we had left that hadn't been claimed by some overdue bill or rough patch we were barely scraping by. But right there in that tiny living room, I remember thinking at least we had warmth, at least we had each other, and maybe. That was enough, at least until the kind of desperate knocking that could wake the dead started echoing through the walls. I hesitated, not because I was afraid, okay, maybe a little, it's not every day someone's at your door past midnight in a downpour. But there was something in those knocks, something that told me whoever was out there needed help more than I needed sleep. So I got up, took a breath, and opened the door to find a young woman absolutely drenched, her hair plastered her face, dress torn at the hem like she'd run through the night just to get here. And her eyes, man, her eyes had this wild, scared look halfway between panic and heartbreak, the kind of look you don't forget. I didn't say much, just handed her a towel, pointed her toward the tiny heater, and poured her the last of the tea. And she didn't talk much either, only said she needed somewhere safe for the night. Her voice barely more than a whispery, could see Emily peeking out from behind the couch, those big, innocent eyes soaking in every detail. But I gave her a reassuring nod and tried to act like this was the most normal thing in the world. Letting a soaked stranger into your home because it's storming, and what else are you supposed to do, right? So I let her have my bed and go, giving me too much credit. I'm not a hero. I just knew what it was like to need a break from whatever was chasing you. Even if it was just for a night, I crashed on the couch, listening to the storm batter the roof, wondering who she really was, what she was running from, but not pressing for answers because sometimes it's enough just to offer shelter. Next morning, the world looked washed out and quiet, that storm smell hanging in the air, and the young woman, she seemed steadier, but still had a wall up. You know? She was polite, thanked me, gathered her things like she didn't want to be any more trouble than she already was. But just as she reached for the door, Emily tugged at her sleeve and handed her half a piece of bread from her own breakfast, small gesture. But I swear I saw something break loose in that woman. Her eyes went glassy, and she just held that bread like it was the first kindness she'd seen in years, said a soft thank you, and disappeared down the empty street, the rain finally letting up. Life settled back into the same routine, hustling for work at the garage, trying to stretch a dollar until it screamed. Emily making the best of secondhand shoes and thrift store dresses, but never losing that bright smile. And for a while it felt like maybe that whole night was just a weird blip, a story you remember in the middle of another long shift. Until one afternoon, this black car, the kind that looks expensive even when it's dirty, rolls up outside the house. I'll never forget the way my stomach dropped. Was it trouble? Did something follow her here? But out steps the same woman. Only now she's polished head to toe, hair neat, clothes sharp, but her eyes are softer, not as haunted, and she introduces herself as Isabella, tells me straight up she's the daughter of one of the city's wealthiest families, the kind of people who have security gates and don't worry about the lights getting shut off at the end of the month, and suddenly everything about that night makes sense. She tells me she'd been running from a situation that could have turned ugly. People who care more about her last name and her father's money than her own safety. And she picked my house out of desperation, not because she thought she'd find kindness there, but because it was the only door she hadn't already tried. And she's been thinking about it ever since how someone with so little to spare didn't ask questions, didn't judge, just offered warmth and tea and a dry bed. And how sometimes that's all it takes to change everything. Now, here's where things get weird because she doesn't show up with a check or some dramatic speech, no. Isabella says she wants to help, not out of obligation but gratitude. And when I start a protest because, yeah, I got my pride, years of scraping but will do that to you, she cuts me off and says, Daniel, let me do this for Emily, if not for you. And suddenly she's arranging for Emily to attend the best school in town, completely covered, no questions asked, and she's connecting me with folks who actually need a mechanic they can trust, which means for the first time in my life, I'm running my own garage instead of patching up rust buckets under the table. It doesn't happen overnight, but slowly our world shifts. Me roof stops leaking. My fridge isn't empty. Emily starts coming home with stories about science fairs and new friends, and I'm finally able to breathe without worrying the next disaster is hiding behind the corner. But the best part? It isn't the money. It isn't even the stability. It's watching the way kindness, even the smallest act, ripples out farther than you'd ever imagine. Months pass, and Isabella becomes more than a memory. She becomes part of our lives, sitting down for simple dinners, bringing flowers for Emily's room, asking about my day like it actually matters. And sometimes I catch her and Emily laughing so loud it fills the whole house. And I realize this isn't just some rich girl's guilt project. This is real. This is what family can be when you let people in. Let me back up a sec. There's a twist in all this too. And I didn't see it coming. Turns out the person Isabella was running from wasn't some dangerous stranger. It was her own fiancé, a guy handpicked by her father to merge two empires. And that night, she ran not just for her own safety, but for her right to choose her own life. And somehow our home, as humble as it was, became the place where she found the strength to stand up for herself, to walk away from all of it. That, to me, is the wildest part, how sometimes the refuge you offer someone else ends up saving you in ways you don't even notice. Because I started out thinking I was giving shelter, but I got back more than I ever gave, and now I get to watch my daughter grow up with more than I ever dreamed I could give her. Anyway, as the sun sets on another long day, I see Emily and Isabella laughing in the yard, the light catching in their hair, and I think about that rainy night, that desperate knocking, and how saying yes just once changed everything. Maybe that's the lesson. Maybe what we give away when we have the least is what ends up mattering most. And maybe, just maybe, the strangers we help for a night can become the people we can't imagine life without. So, I've got to ask, what would you have done? Would you have opened that door, risked a little, offered a stranger kindness when you barely had enough for yourself? I want to hear your story. Share below. Let's talk about what's right, what's fair, what it really means to be part of the community, because I promise you, kindness is never wasted, and sometimes it comes back to you in ways you'd never believe. Yeah, that happened, and I hope it happens for you too.
Xin chào các bạn, mình là Trinh, mình phụ trách viết content. Trên đây là những công việc của mình, là mình lên.
Vamos supor, você falou negócio sério. It is cold, yeah. Next one? Alright. Thank you, man. Hey, if you guys have any trouble, let somebody know. Please.
After the tree to hold on to.
Yeah, they're on the fence.